start the meeting, then whoever the chair is will call the roll, right? And all the board members will just voice that they're here. And the ones that aren't will just be reflected in the record as absent. And so you have to have a quorum, which means you have to have at least 3 of you to conduct business. So, all right, let's take care of this. First off, administration of the loyalty oath. So if you all stand, and then I'm going to read this. And say aye, and you all say your name, and then I'll go through a line, and then you repeat the line, and then when we're done, you all raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. You do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the constitutional laws of the state of Arizona. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies. Sorry, that was both foreign and domestic. And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of governing board member, Lake Mojave Ranchos Fire District, according to the best of my ability. So help me God, or so do I affirm. Thank you all very much. Okay. All right, so now we have consideration of electing a chair and a clerk for the LMRFD governing board pursuant to ARS 48803P. And so the law requires that the board has to elect a chair and a clerk. So the chair basically runs the meetings according to rules of order, and typically it's followed on Robert's rules of order. And then the clerk has the administrative duties of the district, but typically that's taken up by the chief and the staff. So the chair and the clerk typically sign most of the documents. It will be the check signers unless they're not available, and then it'll fall into the board members. We actually have an item on the agenda for that. So what needs to happen now is, amongst the 5 of you, someone has to make a motion for somebody to be the chair of the board.
I'll make the motion now.
Okay.
Nominate Steve Bird.
Okay. Nominated by Mr. Anthony. Mr. Berg is the chair, seconded by Ms. Cass. All right, and then all those, we just a voice vote, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify by saying nay. Mr. Berg's elected the chair of the board. Congratulations, Mr. Berg. All right, now we need to repeat the same thing to do for a clerk. So
I make a motion that David Anthony be nominated for the clerk.
all right.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Kiefer and second by Mr. Berg that Mr. Anthony be elected the clerk of the board. And so we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Well played, sir. Unfortunately, you're outvoted 41. You are the clerk. All right. So that is done. Let the record reflect that. Mr. Berg, or Chair, you are now in charge of the meeting, and so you have an agenda there. So the next item on the agenda, and so what you'll do is you'll read the agenda item. Review the open meeting. The next one is actually number 5 is consideration of establishing a monthly public meeting schedule for the agenda. That's okay.
Consideration of establishing a monthly public meeting schedule for the LMR Governing Board and providing notice pursuant to ARS 48-805A1.
Okay, so I'll provide the staff input just for this initial meeting. So what this does is, basically what we're going to do here is we're going to establish a meeting schedule for you all, and we're going to notice the clerk of the Board of Supervisors where those notices are going to be posted. And so Ellen, you already posted in certain places, so we can continue to do that, but the board has to affirm that. And so Ellen, those places are here at the chamber.
One of them's here, one's the fire department, one's online, and one's in YouTube.
Okay, so currently we do both the fire stations here and then online. And And so if that's acceptable, we need a motion that we continue to do that, and then we need a second, and then we have a vote. And then after you do that, then staff will provide a notice to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors that that's where the agendas for meetings will be posted.
You can post at the post offices also. Post office.
That's up to you all.
Do we have a motion to continue to have those notification where it is now?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vote is unanimous.
So part of the Robert's Rules of Order, so just going forward, what you want to do is you want to make the motion, right? So somebody makes a motion, so in this case, Mr. Terrell made the motion, and then Ms. Kuiper seconded it, and basically you'll want to repeat that. So there's a motion that we're going to post as we do normally, and have staff notice the clerk of the board, and then motion by, and then seconded by, and then you'll say, is there any discussion, right? So once you get an item on the floor, is there any discussion? That allows discussion amongst the board members, and then if there's no discussion, then you just call for the vote. So now we can go on to the next item.
Review the statutory requirements for government administration LMRFD to include Arizona Open Meeting Law requirements specific in the ongoing operation, governance of the LMRFD, and Title 48 statutory requirements specific to the government and administration of fire district, and review of the governing board operating procedure. Can we break that down?
Absolutely.
So we're going to, first of all, we're going to review the opening meeting law.
Yes. So as we get started here, so typically what will happen is staff will make all of you a packet, a board packet, or just like Ellen does for me when I was the administrator, that has all the materials in it that you're going to take action on or review. I'm just passing them out today because this is just a review meeting, but that's something that you can expect from staff as we go forward. So currently your legal counsel is Bill Whittington. And so I engaged Mr. Whittington for the purpose of pushing through the revolving line of credit with National Bank of Arizona. I'm going to provide you Mr. Whittington's contact number, both his, in fact, I've already given it to staff, both his email, his office number, and his cell phone number. I talked to him yesterday, the day before yesterday on the phone, and he wanted me to make sure that I emphasize open meeting law requirements, because this tends to be where the board gets themselves, or boards get themselves in trouble. I know that he will more than likely want to be here at the next meeting, and so did we establish that we were going to keep the meetings at the third Monday at 1:30? Is that, did we establish that? Okay. So he'll want to be here so that he can meet you and he'll speak to you, but I'm sure he'll want to speak to open meeting law again. But just to kind of go through, there's really, the things that you really need to know about this, there's three main components to the open meeting law as it applies to local governments. It's notice, it's the meetings have to be open to the public, and that you can't discuss or take any action that you haven't noticed people on, which notices the agenda, right? And then you have to recount everything that you've done, which is minutes. And so staff will take care of the minutes. But open meeting law, so when we notice, we talk about agenda. So in one of the things that I had sent out, and I've got a copy here, I've got a proposed item of agenda, but those agendas have to be posted a minimum of 24 hours in advance. And so typically I've tried to post them the Friday before we had a meeting on Monday, but they have to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. And then they have to list out all the things that you're going to talk about at the meeting or make decisions on at the meeting, because that notices the public, right? So we've noticed the public where we're going to post agendas, and we're going to post them, and we're going to post them 24 hours in advance, and we're only going to talk about or decide things that are on those agendas. So it doesn't vary from the schools or the county board, so we're all under the same open meeting law concept. So in that regard, I know that sometimes it looks like you're gonna get far afield on agenda items, and people will bring stuff up to the public, and you may hear the chief say something at the chief's report, right? And you may wanna think, oh, I want us, you just can't, right? If it's not on the agenda, you can't talk about it, because that's part of the open meeting law, right? Because if there wasn't an open meeting law, we could just all meet and just kind of decide what you want to do without any notice to the public. So just make sure it's on the agenda, and then accurately recorded what actions were taken for the minutes. And please ask questions as we go along here, because otherwise I'll just draw on and on and on, and then and we'll lose our place. So
Who creates the, it's Kipper.
oh, okay.
Who creates the agenda?
Usually staff creates the agenda, but typically at the end of every board meeting, and I've got that on the model agenda, there's an item on there for you to decide what items go on, what items you want to talk about on your next agenda. So that's always, and typically what staff does is staff puts the boilerplate agenda together, because they know when items come up that are statutorily required, like let's just say, I'll use an example. So the August agenda, more than likely, will have an item on there for an audit, because audits are required. So 240 days after the close of your fiscal year, so June 30th is the close of your fiscal year, you've got 240 days to have an audit done. And so that's something that the board has to order. And that will be in conjunction with, the chief will just put that on the agenda. It'll just be on there. You won't need to tell him, he'll know, hey, I've got all these different things coming up that I have to statutorily, that I have to complete, or that the district has to complete. And he'll put the standard boilerplate things on there. The other items that go on the agenda is stuff that you all will want in regards to setting policy on whatever purchasing items, whatever those happen to be. And those all are listed as action items, and we'll go kind of over that as we get farther into the review. Are there any questions?
I have questions about the agendas items that we want to suggest. Can we direct those to the clerk and have her put those on your?
And typically, as you get more comfortable with this, either the chair or the clerk can, identify agenda items that they want on, and sometimes because you're going to go through a process when you have legal counsel here to set up a set of bylaws that will actually have instructions on how you want to get stuff on the agenda and who puts things on the agenda. But for the temporarily, it'll just more than likely it's going to be the chief for the standard boilerplate, and the chair will determine how that goes. So just as an aside, your next agenda, if you're on the third Monday of the month, your next agenda item, you're already posted for a public hearing on the budget, right? So you're gonna have the budget. You're gonna want your finance person or persons here. The attorney will be here. So you got a public hearing. You're gonna have review financial reports. So kind of like I did when I was the administrator here, we have financial reports. So the financial report, you'll have to approve those, because there's a requirement in state law that the preceding month's financial reports have to be reviewed and approved by the board. That's a standard item, goes on every monthly agenda. Any questions? No questions. All right. Chair, would you like me to move on to statutory requirements? Go ahead.
Special meetings or emergency meetings, are they going to cover that in their bylaws, or is that something that's separate?
Yeah, it should be covered. It'll be covered in bylaws. Yeah. So and typically the chair is empowered to call a meeting whenever it's necessary. So just because the declaration that you're going to make to the clerk of the board of supervisors is, we hold our regular monthly meeting on the third Monday of the month, and it's at wherever it's at the fire station or here, wherever it happens to be. You're going to post the address up there. You're going to notice them about where the agendas are posted. But you're not limited to one meeting a month. You can have as many meetings as you need to ensure that the district's duties and responsibilities are carried out. So the chair can call for a meeting, and it just needs 24 hours. Just needs 24 hours notice. There's rarely anything that you have to do on an emergency basis where you can't provide the 24 hours notice. It's exceedingly rare. And so I just caution everybody, the only thing that has to happen at the fire district with any real sense of urgency is the fire trucks and the ambulances have to go help people,
And other than that, you really have a little bit of time, so just go forward. Good? Yeah, okay. All right.
I had a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Concerning the agenda, when we do grant writing, okay, do we have to put that on the agenda that we are approaching such and such company
So,
and, if you come back with a yes or no, how much?
Yes, sir.
Where it's gonna go?
So, Mr. Anthony's inquiring about grants and grant writing. So when we review the budget, we're gonna do a little summary review of the budget. We don't have any grants built in. So there's a process that you can use to go back and amend your budget, right? To amend it. And you're gonna amend your budget anyway, come at the public hearing when we get to that point. But to your point, sir, the chief is gonna identify, right, grant opportunities, and he's gonna write grants, and basically he's gonna come to you and say, hey, I've written a grant proposal for, I'm gonna make stuff up, cardiac heart monitors through the Assistance to Firefighter Grants Program, or the federal government. I'd like permission to submit the grant for in the amount of whatever the amount is. I wanna buy 2 cardiac monitors, and then the board would decide whether that's acceptable or not. Because remember, there'll be matching funds you'll have to have. Some grants have matching amounts, and you'll have to determine whether you think you can afford the matching amounts. Because you're gonna get the grant doesn't mean it's all good, right? And yes, we can see grants, so AFG's pretty easy, right? Usually there's a 10% match, so they pay 90% and you pay 10. It's always a good deal. Some grants aren't so generous, and then you have to decide, are you able to afford that? But to Mr. Anthony's point, yes, he will. The chief will come back.
I'll save some of those questions for the lawyer, then, because it's very vague in the Arizona statutes on, it just falls under ethics more than anything.
Yeah, and Mr. Whittington, and or going into the future, if you decide you're going to use somebody other than Mr. Whittington, we'll be able to answer all those questions for you. Absolutely. Any other questions on open meeting law? And this is just more open meeting law information. Mr. Whittington actually wrote that, and it's in the Arizona Fire District Association handbook. So that's just for your reading, just to update you on that. So, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I've moved to item B.
Yes, please do, sir.
All right. Title 48, statutory requirements. So, you'll get these via email as well, but I'll give you one so you have one to refer to. So I can do it now. So this is just a sheet that has that's front and back, and so we'll just start on page 1. It just outlines basically what a fire district shall and may do overall. And so there is you'll hear more about this from your attorney, but there's a thought of law that says unless you're empowered to do it by the legislature, you can't do it, right? So you really have a very narrow field of your responsibilities here, and it is truly just to provide fire and emergency medical services, so you can't get too far afield from that. And this basically lays out exactly what you have to do and what you may do as a fire district, so you can't get too far afield, paving roads and doing all kinds of other stuff. You'd be surprised how that comes up in some communities, right? So, but you kind of stick to your knitting here. So Title 48, under Chapter 5 is where we find all this. So, you have to at least hold public meetings at least once a month, right? And that's where you're going to have review and approve your financials. You have to create a budget. You have to submit it to the county. It has to be submitted by August 1st of every year. Right? There's limitations on how much money you can extract out of the taxpayers that are within the district. Your tax rate cap limited, and there's a 3 1/4 tax rate cap limit. This district's at that tax rate cap limit. If it wasn't for that, you'd have an 8% year-over-year levy limit that you'd have to comply with. Since you're already at the 3 1/4 tax rate cap, you're already taxing at the maximum. So there's really your budget is set up at $3.25, and so you have to do that. You have to post that same budget to notice the public about this is how much tax money we're going to spend every year, and this is what we're going to spend it on. You have to determine the compensation payable to district personnel, and so that's all built in your budget right now. But those are things that you're going to have discussions with the chief and the staff going forward in regards to personnel costs and benefits and retaining people, and so all those things go within that. You have to require probationary employees to submit a full set of fingerprints so that they can get through a background check. You have to appoint or hire a fire chief. In that regard, I've appointed Chief DeMaio, and to my authority as the administrator. He's on an interim contract. It's 1 year and 1 year renewable, but you'll probably want to address that at some point in the future. Compensation and benefits and what kind of contract you want him on. Your attorney will be able to advise you on all those things. Elect a chair and a clerk. We just did that today. Fill vacancies on the board within 90 days of the vacancy. So that just means if one of you happens to leave the board for whatever reason, you move out of the area, you just choose not to serve anymore, the remaining board members, as long as there's a quorum, appoints a replacement to serve out that term, the remaining term of the vacant member. If you don't act within 90 days, the County Board of Supervisors, well, this will be effective August 6th, the County Board of Supervisors will, if you don't act within 90 days, will appoint members. And so if you get to the point where you lose your quorum, let's just say 3 members that leave, and you only have 2 left, then the County Board of Supervisors in the future will now have the ability to appoint to the vacancy so that you can keep the board operational. You have to attend 6.5 hours of training in regards to how to operate and administer and govern a fire district. And so that will be, encompasses a comprehensive open meeting law training, financial training, governance and administration and statutory training, and ethics. And so those things are available either by going to a Arizona Fire District Association conference. So there's 2 a year. There's one in July down in the Phoenix metro area, and there's one in January here in Bullhead City. Actually, it's across the river in Laughlin. So those 2 opportunities, or you can order the materials up through the Fire District Association and go through it yourself and attest to the fact that you covered the materials in the 6.5 hours and send it back in, and you'll be fine there as well for those that can't make any of the other meetings. Comply with various financial requirements, and that's what I'm talking about, the monthly financial reports that you're going to have to approve. And when you adopt your budget, if you happen to do that next month, and you don't have to do it next month, or you can have your public hearing and not adopt until July, because those things aren't due to the county until August 1st, the amounts. But the chair and the clerk have to certify that the district hasn't spent more money than they've taken in, so you're not out of balance, right? You're not upside down, and that you will project out over the next 2 years that you're going to be solvent. And so your finance person will do that for you. The finance person that I contracted with when I came on board for the county is a gentleman by the name of Gabe Boulder, and he's worked with the James Vincent Group, and I will provide you with the contacts, the office, the cell, and the email for Gabe and his team. And so just as a background, Gabe's an accountant, and he also functions under contract as a chief financial officer for a number of fire districts here in Arizona. And so what happens is he goes to those meetings, the monthly meetings. He does all the he does the reconciliations. He preps the cash flow statements. He makes sure that you're in line with the budget, and then he shows up at your meetings and he provides a report to the board and says, here's where you are, here's where we projected you to be, here's where you're off, or here's where you're saving money, and then provides that information to the board. And then at the conclusion of that, you approve those financial reports, and they're entered into the record. Whether you use Gabe going forward or not, or you choose to use somebody else of your own, however you all decide you want to do that, that's fine. I use Gabe because he just knows the business, and they're familiar with him at the treasurer's office now because I brought him in, and also your bank is familiar with him because there's only a couple of banks in Arizona that truly work with fire districts, and so Gabe works with them as well on a number of other districts. And Gabe will be here at your next meeting so that he can walk you through, along with the attorneys, so that they can walk you through the finances and how you want to run things going forward.
Is he located in Phoenix?
He is.
And under the past budget, his services have been paid for out of that?
No, his services are paid for by me. Yeah, I contract with Gabe. That was part of what I did with the county. I contract with the county for X amount of money, and then I bring in other staff members. So I paid for Gabe. The amount that he charges is built into the budget, because whether you use Gabe or whether you use somebody else, it doesn't matter. You're going to have you need a financial professional to help you through that. The other thing that I'll talk just about Gabe, but it could be any financial professional. He will prep all your information for audits. So he'll get your trial balances up, he'll work with your auditor, because there's a lot of stuff to do. The auditor just won't show up and say, I'm just going to audit you. There's a lot of internal accounting things that have to be done when you prep for an audit. He does that as well. So as your financial professional.
And that cost in the budget that's included in the budget is for him to attend all the meetings or just certain meetings?
He should be here at every meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, he should be either here physically present, or in some months where you don't have a budget or audit or those things, you can always Skype him in to save some money so he doesn't travel. But so basically, when I took over the district, what we did was I brought Gabe on board, and we built a whole new accounting system, and it's all online. So it's hosted, it's web hosted, and so Gabe maintains that for the district. And it's a QuickBooks Enterprise system, and so he can do everything remote. And so when Nancy and Ellen are working in the QuickBooks system, he sees all those things and you'll be able to do that too. So basically, if that's the board's pleasure, when you speak with Gabe, we can get everybody onto the QuickBooks system, and you'll be on there as viewers as opposed to administrators. So Nancy and Ellen enter stuff, and Gabe's the overall administrator, and they make the adjustments. But you all will be able to pull it up from your home computer and look at that and say, on any given day, here's where we stand financially, here's the amount of money we had come in this month, here's what went out, and all those things. And we do that web-based so that we're able to do that on the fly, so you all can see that. All right, any questions thus far? All right, so on the May, there are quite a number of items, and this is all just kind of written out, but I've got the statutory, but this is all found in 48805. And so you can employ personnel deemed necessary for fire protection, medical, and rescue services. You already do that, but you'll determine the numbers. Construct fire stations, lease purchase equipment, any of these items going down this list, and I know I sent that out. I don't think I need to read through every one of them, but you kind of get the gist that it's all related to the delivery of fire and emergency medical services here within the fire district. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those items that I have listed, or we can expand on any of them that you all would like to know about. So, yes, ma'am.
The fire code.
Uh-huh.
It says, adopt with approval of voters their own fire code and enforce it. How different is that from the existing fire code? Or is it just adopting the existing fire code?
Well, you can adopt a code that is more stringent than what the state fire code is. So the state fire marshal adopts fire code and it covers the entire state of Arizona. And so that is like the foundational code. Now you can go above and beyond that if you want. Most of the time, the only people that do that are typically cities or really large fire districts that have a pretty dense population in a large commercial area, so that they can have requirements that are stricter. Typically run sprinkler requirements and things like that. I don't think that that's probably something that you all want to get into right now. So I would just say the state fire code works. It works good. Last meeting we signed an IGA with NAC for fire prevention services. And so the chief is well aware of what it takes to do fire code enforcement and those kinds of things, but they have a specialist there that will do the plan review, and not that you get all that much of it, but at times when you do, at least you'll be able to call on a professional that will be able to do those things. All right. If there's no more questions, I am going to go to, with your permission, Chair, item C.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yes, no, go ahead.
Number 13, adopt fee schedules within and outside the jurisdictional boundaries for fire protection services and preservation of life. That's just for the fire department services. The ambulance services are under the con.
Yes, ma'am.
And is there some statewide guide that's used to determine that, or how does that get determined?
That would be up to you all, but I can tell you that for it to hold up to a challenge in court, there has to be a nexus between the fee that you're going to charge for whatever service that is, and so you can't just arbitrarily set fees, and then if there's no nexus between that and the service, i.e., if it only costs the district, if it costs the district $500 to do something, and you arbitrarily set the fee at, oh, we're just going to charge $2,500. It's probably not going to be defensible in court. But there are fee schedules, and lots of districts have fee schedules. And other than this district runs an annual service, and so most of the fee schedules surround emergency medical services. And because you do run an annual service, you're restricted to working inside your certificate of necessity, which is issued by Arizona Department of Health Services. And so there's really it's very difficult to add fees on top for emergency medical services when you're already running the ambulance. You'll just kind of run into some issues there.
That's it.
Okay. Sir, with your permission, I'll go to item C.
Thank you, sir.
These, I sent these out email too. Make sure everybody's got a copy. So this is a rules of procedure. This is a standard rules of procedure, came out of the Arizona Fire District Association handbook. I know your attorney will want to talk to you about having bylaws, about how the board's going to operate, just in general, how the district's going to operate under governance of a board. But this is just a place to kind of get started, and basically this just talks about code of ethics, following the open meeting law, that the chairperson is the presiding officer at the meetings, how the meetings are conducted. They're conducted typically by Robert's Rules of Order. Because it talks about voting, so right now we're voice voting everything. But like when you adopt a budget or other things, members may want a roll call vote, and if one of the members wants a roll call vote, then the chair would just call the roll by voice roll call. And so I have in here a suggested board agenda format for you all to follow just to begin with.
And as you go through, you'll figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you and what's effective and efficient. And with input from the chief, you all will kind of find your rhythm and your way, so to speak, because there's 150 fire districts in Arizona, and everybody's got everybody's within the open meeting law, but everybody's got just a little bit different way when they conduct their meetings. And so that's up to you all. You'll find your comfort level and you'll move along. I would point out that now that there's a board here, that the opportunity for the public to interact with the board is that call to the public. Okay, so typically the board meetings will operate with the back and forth between the board members and then staff. So the chief will present, here's an item. I'll throw out an example. We want to buy a new ambulance, right? And so that would be an item that's on the agenda under discussion of possible action items. And so there could be multiple of them. So let's just say we're going to buy a new ambulance. So the chief will have already, if it's going to be on the agenda, he will have already done the background, right? He'll have prices and costs and all the detail of that. And then the board will have a discussion about that. And he'll talk about, and this is how it fits inside the budget, and do we have money for it? You want to ensure that with your financial guide. But on those items, beyond call to the public, if the chair can take comments or questions from the audience on individual items, if that's the pleasure of the chair. So there is opportunity for the public to interact with the board on some of these on action items, but only at the pleasure of the chair. Otherwise, the board meetings are truly they're noticed. It's for the board to interact amongst them and interact with the chief and determine how things are going to go, and then they vote this through. Most boards tend to, when there's items that are of public concern, right, that they allow the public to interact, and that people will be able to stand and say, "Hi, I'm Bobby Casey. I'd like to ask a question about this," and Bobby would direct that to the chair and ask the question. And as long as you're on topic, right, and you're sticking with, you're talking about buying an ambulance, you're okay, right? You can have a conversation. If Bobby happened to stand up and say, "Hey, you know what, that's great where you want to think about buying an ambulance, but I think X, whatever X is, I think we ought to buy whatever, something else." Now you're off topic, and now you're not going to have any conversation back and forth with him about his off-topic deal. If you want to talk about whatever Bobby brought up, you just agendize it for the next meeting, right? You just say, "Hey, you know what? Perfect. Chief, agendize on that next meeting. Let's move on," and then you move on. So you got to be on topic and on those agenda items. So with that, I know that the attorney will want to chat with you about this, but this is the basic information, so you're able to get started for your next meeting, which is going to be the third Monday of the month at 1:30, whatever day that is. June 20th? It's June 20th. Right on. Okay.
John, can I ask a question? If you have an agenda, I can't ask a question?
You can ask the board chair if you could ask a question.
They won't be able to answer it.
You know, you could ask him if you could ask me a question that he might have.
What I was going to ask is, you have an agenda.
You have to ask the chair.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, if there are agenda items that are put down on the agenda, and some of them are for discussion only, and some of them are for discussion and possible action. My question is, I'm asking, can the public only talk about the agenda items that are for possible action? Am I wording that right? There's two ways that they can be on the agenda. And one is just for discussion only, which means, the way I understand it, it can only be for discussion only by the board members. But if it says for discussion only and possible action, then the public, then we can interact with the board. I want to know if I'm correct in that.
Mr. Flynn, did you answer that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Only if the board wants to entertain questions or comments from the public on that item. So it doesn't matter if it just says discussion. So let's take, for example, so every meeting, there's with the exception of this one, there's a report from the fire chief, right? And it's a report. So the fire chief can stand up and say all these things that are in his report. But that's what it is. There's no action item there. So even though the chief says, hey, wow, we wrecked an ambulance, I'm making stuff. We wrecked an ambulance the other day, right? And we need to buy a new ambulance. Well, that's great. That's in the chief's report. That doesn't mean that those 5 get to make any decisions about that wrecked ambulance because it's not on the agenda, right? He can say that. That's for him to report. But you can only interact if the chair allows. So it doesn't matter if it's just discussion or report or if it's discussion and action.
Okay.
It's if the chair. Other than call to the public. And then at call to the public, of course, at meetings, at call to the public, you're allowed to interact with the public, but only on items that are on the agenda, right? So if, I'm just going to pick up Bob. So Bob stands up and says something about Meadview. Let's just say he says something about Meadview, and he wants to do something in Meadview with the fire department, but it's not on the agenda. You can take that under consideration. You can advise the chief, hey chief, let's put that on the next meeting agenda, but you can't have a back and forth conversation about that and come to some kind of conclusion about whatever Bob says. Bob can just stand up and notice you and say, hey, this is what I think and this is what I want to do. But you've got to make sure that it's on the agenda. And trust me, your attorney, when he's here, is going to reinforce this tonight. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
Item number 7, review and consideration of the fiscal year 2017 tentative budget for the LMRFD was adopted by the administrator, establishing a date, time, place for a public hearing pursuant to ARS 48-805.
Who's pulling trees today? All right. So this will look very familiar as in the amount. Total revenues, total expenditures, $906,011 is what I adopted at the last meeting. And so when we go top to bottom, top starts off with revenues, bottom is expenditures. So real and personal property tax is $531,349. So that's your direct property tax rate at 3 1/4 here in the district. Fire district assistance tax, $66,000. Prior year tax levy, $68,865. So the county continually collects tax money all through the year. And so prior year tax levy, there are years where folks are not going to pay their taxes for a lot of different reasons. Investors don't pay taxes for a number of reasons. Homeowners that are under distress don't pay taxes. But then they make those up. And so then they're in arrears, and as they make those payments to the county, that's all allocated between the various special taxing districts. So if I own property here in Mountain Ranches, and I'm in arrears for a couple of years back, and I pay the county $100, I say, well, I've got whatever my tax was $500, and I pay the county $100 of what I owe them in taxes. They take that $100 and then they portion it out percentage-wise to all the various entities it goes to, right? Some percentage of that will come to the fire district, some will go to the county, some will go to the school, some will go to whatever other taxing entities cover the area that my piece of property sits in, and those are all posted to the account. And so when the county does the monthly financial report, and you'll see those, that's all allocated. You'll see what came in for your current year, what was allocated from fire district assistance tax, what came in for prior year, and your financial professional will be able to tell you whether you're on the mark, whether you're kind of on estimate where you should be or where you shouldn't be, but you continue to get. So just because we have, so the next item down is, you can see delinquency. And I've got that minused out at 89,000. We have a pretty high tax delinquency here, just overall in the area. But I always minus that out so that if I didn't, you're looking at that and thinking, oh, I've got 89,000 more than I think that I'm gonna have, right? And when you really don't. And so I always try to add that in, especially in districts where we're on the margins financially. So we're a lot better off this year. And we're gonna be a lot better off going into the next year than we were in the past year and we were in the years before that. But I still write the delinquency on there so that you're aware of it. Annual service revenue, same deal. $668,000 in annual service revenue, but by the time you take out bad debt and allowances, and so you have to take out allowances for Medicare and Medicaid, and Access is the Medicaid provider here in Arizona. They only pay a certain amount, so even though our base rate is $1,700, and then we get mileage and everything else, if we go next door here and the person next door here is on Medicare and they're having a cardiac issue, and we pick them up and we take them over to Kingman Regional, the bill from Lake Mojave Ranchos, I'm gonna make numbers up again, might be, let's say it's $1,850. Medicare allowance on that specific transport may only be $300. And so you take the 300 because you don't have a choice, because if you refuse the 300, you get zero. Well, it's just one of those, welcome to life in the village. The feds, and that's just kind of the way it goes. The chief has lots of years' experience dealing in the system. He knows how the system works. If you have questions about it, ask the fire chief.
I have a question about,
Yes.
are you through with that?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sir.
The fire assistance tax?
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that's a tax that's paid by everybody in Arizona for reimbursement for places that don't pay tax, for instance, federal building, schools, those kinds of things. Is that correct?
The fire district assistance tax, so it's, every county levies one. So everybody in Arizona pays, but only the folks that are in Mojave County pay into the fire district assistance tax you get. And so it's basically to pay for, like you said, but it's just in general, non-taxpayers. So it's to pay for folks who might be in the district or come through the district that don't live here, because we make most of our money through property taxes. It allows us to deliver service to them, and then we just don't have to write them a bill.
Is that money automatically collected and distributed proportionally to all the districts?
Yes, sir. So there's a 10-cent rate cap, county-wide rate cap on fire district assistance tax. Mojave County happens to be one of the counties that doesn't generate enough money under that 10-cent cap to fully fund all the districts. And so you get a proportional or a pro rata share of the fire district assistance tax. And there's a formula for that, and your financial provider, I can go through that with you, but your financial professional will be able to tell you. And as you get more involved in the system, you'll pick that, you'll start picking this stuff up, and then it'll just become second nature to you. So. All right, so total revenues, 906.11, and then we go down through expenditures. And so I'll hit some of the highlighted items. $446,985. What that buys is the fire chief, a full-time administrative assistant, and 9 full-time firefighters, and along with the overtime, wages, and holidays, enough to ensure that there's 3 people on duty a day, 7 days a week, 365 days. And of course, you have taxes, workers' comp, which is high, it's the fire service, PSPRS retirement, which is Public Safety Personnel Retirement System. So it's a retirement system run by the state for police officers and firefighters. And so all your uniformed people that are full-time, all we pay their PSPRS retirement into it, and they do as well. $626,565 is your total under personnel costs. And then buildings and we can go through this, buildings and land, vehicle fuel, $24,000. Vehicle maintenance is at $30,000. That's high. I bumped that up again this year. based upon, we have some, the ambulances are typically the vehicles that we're running the wheels off of, and we definitely need a new ambulance here, and we'll get to that here in just a second. So I got 30,000, go through these, then you get down here, ambulance lease purchase, so I've got $30,000 in there for an ambulance lease purchase, that's for a new ambulance. It's up to you all how you wanna manage all that, but we needed a new ambulance for some time. The last new to us ambulance we got was surplus from the military, from the federal government, and it had really low mileage, but it's an older unit, and we're running the wheels off that too. And so we really need a new ambulance. I have a lease payment in there. The chief's aware of that. He and I have discussed it. But that's up to you all when you want to go forward with that, or if you want to go forward with that. And that'll have to be on an agenda item as well. Let's see, your dispatch services are provided by Kingman Regional. We have $7,500 in training expenses for both the board and the employees. And if you flip over, ambulance collection fees is what we pay to a firm by the Mediclaim Data Services. Mediclaim Data Services is a collection services firm. That's who I just chose to use as the administrator. When I got hired on here, Ellen was actually doing all the ambulance billing, and it is a very, very complex task, and it's very time consuming. So she was spending about 90% of her time.
Well, yeah, we had other staff, we had to hire other staff to do that.
So you're really not going to get anybody that knows the business for $32,340. It's paid on a percentage. Our collection rate is, they do a nice job collecting. There's a lot of ambulance collection firms in the state of Arizona. Some of them are tied to fire districts, some are tied to municipal, some are private services. The gentleman that runs Mediclaim was the chief financial officer for Rural Metro Corporation, which was the largest ambulance provider in the state before AMR bought them. And so he knows what he's doing, but certainly something to explore. Y'all are, if you can find a better deal, then that's good. And if that's something that you want to do, then that's a discussion you got to have with the chief at some point, and you all can figure out how you want to do that. So. I've got legal posted in there at $25,000 for the initial year. A majority of that is trying to get the revolving line of credit in place, and so we're going to talk about that here in another agenda item. Professional services is your financial professional and audit services for the year, and then we've got some other small postage, shipping, office supplies. I don't have anything in vacation and sick liability. You'll need to talk about that. So you can see that I've got 37,833 negative on there on contingency because I reallocated some of these costs. What we don't have on the budget, which you're going to address here in June, is your carry forward. And so I estimated probably late spring our carry forward was going to be about anywhere between $50,000 and $60,000 as it stands right now, unless something, we spend a lot of money in June. It's probably going to be right about $100,000. So we should have about $100,000 carry forward. And so, but like I said at the meeting when I adopted the tentative budget, there's a lot of items still that need to be addressed. Probably you'd start talking about a staff vehicle for the chief. You're gonna have a down payment on that ambulance of some amount, right? The bank's gonna want some amount. It doesn't have to be much, but you're probably gonna want to allocate a little bit of money so people can have sick and vacation time, because right now, when we have sick and vacation time, or at least through the majority of this year, what we were doing is we just black out. We just black out one of the stations, and typically that was Meadview, which leaves Meadview short, which doesn't leave the people in Meadview all that content about the services, so try not to do that whenever we can. But those are the kinds of items, and so then you'll want to carry some money in reserve or contingency forward from year to year. And if you can build that up, that's always good too, to have a little money in the bank, right? Because as we all know, right, this year we're really scrambling to try and get the revolving line of credit established so that we can operate between, basically, now with 100,000, operate between probably mid-August, thereabouts, up until we start getting the majority of our tax collections in, which is in October, begins in October. Depends on when they send the tax bills out, but typically it starts in October and picks up speed in November. So that will be something, and Gabe will be here at the next meeting. Your financial professional will walk you through all these things. We'll have a better idea of where we're going to close out the fiscal year, and then you can always amend that in July so that you show your exact amount that you carried over and what that does to your budget. I'm happy to answer any questions about the budget, but I want to give you a brief summary, kind of a rundown. Any questions you might have after today, you're more than welcome to call the chief, and he will chat with you about it. So there's probably, and you know what, let's talk, I'm going to backtrack here for just a second about open meeting law and what we call polling, so just so that you're aware. So any of you can talk to the chief or anybody else anytime you want, right? You can have a one-on-one discussion. You can have a one-on-one discussion with the chief. You can have a one-on-one discussion with you. What you can't do is have 3 or more of you having that discussion with the chief or anybody else. So as soon as you get 3 of you together and you start talking about the fire district, you've got to be posted. You've got to be agendized and posted. So 2 of you can come in and talk to the chief. 2 of you can come in and talk to the chief, and then the next 2 of you can come in and talk to the chief, and then the last one can come in and talk to the chief.
Chief, I need to spend talking to this.
It could be. What you can't do and what he can't do is 2 of you can't go in and talk to the chief and then come back out and then go to the other board members and say, hey, talk to the chief today. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I think we should do. And then you all have discussions. And he can't do that with each. You can't call every one of you individually on the phone and say, hey, I'm going to buy a new ambulance. I'm just using a new ambulance. And to buy a new ambulance. And this guy says, oh, I think we need a new ambulance. That'd be a good idea. And then he calls Ms. Kiffer and says, hey, I'm going to buy a new ambulance. Oh, really? I think we need a new ambulance too. Well, funny you should say that, because I just talked to Ms. Cass, and she thinks we ought to buy an ambulance too. And then he calls the chair and says, I think we have to buy an ambulance. He says, okay, we'll put that on the agenda. He goes, well, you know what? Turns out I've already talked to the other 2 other board members, and if you vote yes, then we've got 3, right? That's polling, and that's a violation of the open meeting law. So it's always
Bad. I already know that.
and the chief has a lot of experience at this, even though he wasn't the chief there over at Golden Valley, right? So he's been through this. He gets that. I'm just kind of bringing that up so that when you do start having interactions with the chief or staff or back and forth, that you're mindful of, hey, if I start having conversations with the other board members, what I shouldn't be doing is trying to call votes or poll or pass information from, hey, I talked to Ms. Cass, and now I'm going to talk to Mr. Berg, and I'm going to talk to Mr. Terrell, and I'm going to talk to Mr. Anthony, and then I'm passing information on between all those, because now that truly we're violating the spirit of the open meeting law. You'll hear me.
And that's regulated pretty much by us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would there be an issue before them writing to meet you together to the board meeting?
As long as you're not talking about the Lake Mojave Ranches Fire District making decisions, you can,
And that's their responsibility to make sure that they don't do that. But just for convenience, it would be easy for them to write together.
Fishing, floor tile, color of the paint of your house.
Typically, how boards typically operate is that you'll either, when you want to have things done at a board meeting, you'll ask the chief to look into it and find information, and then he can email that information out to everybody, and then you can discuss it at the next meeting, or everything goes through the chair. So typically at fire boards, the chair would be the point of contact for other folks. Like, let's say we're doing the revolving line of credit, right? And we'll get to that here in just a minute, but the chair would talk to the chief about it, and then the chair would call whoever at the bank, right? Or the attorney, and have the interaction with the attorney or with the bank or with the chief. And that way it keeps you from having 5 members calling all these people, and then the information starts getting passed back and forth, and the next thing you know, you get more comfortable, and then all of a sudden, you've got all kinds of open meeting law problems, so. All right. Questions?
Live